Okay, guys, I'm going to go through the handstand push-up Q&A. Now, I put a post up like 2 or 3 weeks ago asking for questions on the handstand push-up. So we've got a few questions to go through today. And then if anyone comes on live, I'm going to answer those in the moment. So handstand push-ups. I'm just going to go through probably floor variation today. I'm not going to go too crazy and go into deficit. We can talk about it if we have any questions, but I'm just going to go with the standard handstand push-up. So head to floor handstand push-up. So handstand push-up, I'm going to start with the line of progression. So this is one of the main questions that I get is in terms of what's the sequence of exercises you should do, or what's the sequence of drills you should do to get to the end result. So if we think the end result is obviously the handstand push-up, see which pen works best. So if we just go handstand push-up, and I'll put full handstand push-up. Now, it could be deficit, it could be going on to things like 90-degree handstand push-ups and things like that. But let's think about the line of progression. And this is the way I like to program all the time and the way I coach. So especially if I'm coaching coaches. So one of the most important things is to know the steps down the stepping stone. And if we start with the very easiest variation, I'm hoping you guys can see the whiteboard okay, and my terrible handwriting as well. So if we just think about each step along the way towards the handstand push-up. So if we start off with the easiest thing, so best place to start, and most of you who are thinking about handstand push-ups will find these initial ones quite easily, and quite easy. And if you don't, obviously they're where we need to focus on. So if we just think about a standard push-up, so a bent arm strength movement, a standard push-up, so just a floor push-up. And if we're thinking about the floor push-up, we really want to make that very, very strict. So what I mean by that is we want to have one segment. So your body should stay from toes to shoulders as one piece, come all the way down and come back up again. So it sounds easy, but if you haven't tried push-ups in that way and you've just done them standard ones to start with, let's not try and get the wheelbarrow in. So in that position here, so I'm being one piece. I'm coming down, not changing the body line in any way, all the way down if the hat allows me to there. So chest touches the floor, and then I slowly come back up again at one piece. So if you struggle with that or just use that as a warm-up, that's a real cool way of doing, again, that carryover towards the handstand push-up. Because when we do the handstand push-up, that's what we really want is this straight line or this one segment that comes down and back up again as one. Most people will tend to banana or lose position as they do it. So starting that off in the right way with push-ups is a real great way to do it, or a great warm-up. So push-ups, then we could go dips. So same thing, and you can play around with dips, obviously, and make them easier or harder. Dips are something that I'd recommend that everyone keeps in their body weight training. Depending on, that doesn't matter if you're up this end and doing 90-degree handstand push-ups and dead presses, I'd still recommend that you do dips in some way. So dip comes next. And you could argue that the push-up or the dip isn't really a handstand in any way, but it's just going to help increase that strength, that bent arm strength movement. So then we have dips. I'd probably then go a pike push-up. So let's look at those now and try and get the technique correct. That's going to give us the best possible carryover towards the handstand push-up. So obviously we've been through push-ups in that straight body position. Dips, we just want to be getting leaning forwards and using as much chest and shoulders as we can. So not a big fan of doing the old school way of doing dips, you know, like on the back of a bench or something. So this type of thing, I wouldn't recommend you do dips in that way. We want to try and have, ideally we have bars that are even higher than this, so I can have that straight body and not close. But with bars like this, I'm going to have to close my knees and close my hips to create enough space to go up and down. So one of the things, and there's a question that came up as well in terms of the P-bars, having some external rotation in the hand. So even more than just being in that neutral position there. So external rotation is going to help. So when I do my handstand push-ups, I externally rotate and turn the hands out this way. So if we can do that, so these bars, obviously, because they're separated, allow me to do that. So I can have a slight external rotation. So that's going to open the chest up as I come down and create a stronger position. So there, and then nice and deep in that bottom position. Ideally be able to hold there and come back out again with control. Now, if you can't do that, obviously we can break that down and work the dip. But if you're still working on your dips, then I would tie in like freestanding and handstand as a priority and then work on dips. So you got those things happening at the same time, and not worry too much about the handstand push-up yet if you don't have dips, because obviously you want to be working in this area. And when you're working out something like this with this line of progression, you're obviously going to have your 1 rep. So when someone is looking at this line and going, okay, I can do this thing. So if you can't do pike push-ups, but you can do dips, you want to work out how many repetitions you can do. So you'll have a 5 rep and you'll have a 1 rep. So 1 rep, if you can only get 1 rep of dips, we obviously need to make the dips easier or go back to the push-ups to work on your 5 reps, because 5 reps is where you want to be working, not 1 rep. 1 rep is where we want to just play with the 1 rep, so tease that one. So add that as an addition to the 5 reps. But the 5 reps wants to be like, I don't know, like a 5x5, a traditional strength programming. So 5x5. So if I can get 5 dips, but I can only get 1 pike push-up, my main work wants to be on the dips, and then I slowly integrate the pike push-ups. And that just carries on all the way along. So you'll have a 1 rep, you'll have a 5 rep. 5 reps is the stuff you should be doing on a regular basis for repetitions and sets. And then we just play with the 1 rep, and that should slowly keep moving down the line of progression. Now with the pike push-ups, there is a little bit of flexibility involved for this floor version, because we need to have this position. So ideally a high hip. If we're already in this position, it's looking more like a push-up or a dip. So we want to be more here ideally. I like to get people to go all the way back to an open shoulder position, which is the same as your standard handstand push-up. So there, and then come forwards. So the shoulders are coming forwards of the hands into some protraction, so round in the upper back. Elbows come in all the way down, head kisses the floor, push back out and back again. So that would be seen as like the standard pike push-up. And then you can start to make that harder by deficit. So you could go have your hands up on a box or something and then come down, touch collarbone to the edge of the box and then come back up and open. So that would be one making it harder. You could raise your feet up. By raising the feet up, it puts more weight into the hands and shoulders. So obviously progresses us closer to that handstand push-up. So we have variations of each of these. So don't think when we do this that there's just one variation of the push-up, one variation of the dip. You could argue that for each one of those, there's another separate line of progression. And if you think that's easier and that's harder, so for each one of these, you have this line of progression. So it's like you go up this one, and then you go to the bottom of this one and go up that ladder, and then you go to the pike push-ups and go up that ladder. So it's like a zigzag effect. So don't think it's just like pass or fail on one thing. We can make the pike push-up that much easier. We can make the dip that much harder, and they cross over. Once we get up to pike push-ups and they're quite comfortable, and at the same time around the pike push-ups, I want to be looking at trying to get someone to do a eccentric chest to wall handstand push-up. So eccentric means down only, wall handstand push-up. Now, there are some prerequisites, obviously, to be able to do this. One, we want to have the bodies to stay as that one piece and get into a good chest to wall handstand position. So you want to feel like you've got a good, strong handstand push-up. So more so, these ones we can sort of play with. This one, when we can start to get down this end and further on, there's some prereqs. So which are quite important, because if you don't get into the right position, like if you can't do a chest to wall handstand, you shouldn't be doing eccentrics against the wall. So prerequisites, we want to have a chest to wall handstand, and we want to be able to come down with some sort of control in that position. So with the eccentric, we also want a bottom position. So this is really important, that bottom position, and something we don't think about too much until you get upside down and then you slowly come down and don't know where you're going. Think of it like a squat. So if you got to the bottom of the squat and you couldn't hold the position, you would just fall over, you fall out of the squat. There's no way you'd be able to get back up again. So we need to have the bottom position, we need to have the control, we need to have the chest to wall handstand. So if I demonstrate one of those, now this wall in the garage, the brick wall, isn't ideal for this. So ideal wall would be a smooth wall. And then you could put socks on. And if you put socks on, then you can slide down the wall. You definitely don't want to slide down too much on a wall like this because you'll end up with no toenails left. So let's have a look. So I'm going to walk up. So that same idea where I've got the body in one segment, that one piece, going to lay the toes down. So there's the open shoulder position. Now, before I come down, I'm going to take the shoulders forwards. And then I'm going to start to bend the elbows. Elbows come in. I come all the way down until my head, my forehead touches the floor. Hold for a few seconds. Now the hard bit is getting out. So a lot of people get down the bottom there and they get really uncomfortable and not be able to get out of that bottom position because it's like stuck on your head. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. So that's the eccentric though. So notice when I've done that, and this ties into one of the other questions we had about balancing the handstand push-up. We want to think about the handstand push-up shape. So if my hands are there, then my body position wants to be like more like that. That's probably a little bit too much lean, but you'll get the idea. So my body position wants to be more like this. So I'm happy because I've got a good technique there. So the shoulders come forwards of the hands and the feet come back. So if we can get good at that like position where we come down like this and then come back up again, that's going to make handstand push-ups much easier, especially for repetitions. And less energy is going to be spent on trying to control the position. So if I show you a handstand push-up, now what I've just done now is my only warm-up I've done. So obviously do more warm-up would be step number one. So watch what happens if I'm here. So straight body position, open shoulders, and then my shoulders come forwards, my feet come backwards. So that's the angle we're talking about. Then the elbows come in, head forwards, head kisses, come back up, shoulders open back again, back to that position. So really important that we keep that body straight, come down, come back again. Now, there are some little tricks you can do when you're learning to help you. So you can arch your back, you can arch your legs at the right time to use overbalance to help you. But that's really the ideal. So that angle getting right. And we can obviously learn that against the wall when we're coming down. We slide down the wall. What we don't want to do, and a lot of people do, is they slide down into a banana and they arch the body. And then the arch is between you and the hands, and you start to collapse in that void. We don't want to do that. That's gonna create an issue, especially when you try and reverse it and go back up, because then you're trying to go back up for extension and you're just going to collapse on the floor. Okay, so then we've got, where's my pen? So eccentric down only, handstand push-up. Then we've got some choices. At the same time as doing this in parallel, if you want a freestyle and handstand push-up, you want to make your freestyle and handstand super strong, especially the toe pull position. So the under balance position in a handstand. So I'm going to have another line there that runs parallel with this line. So strong freestanding handstand, especially under balance. So we want to be able to control the under balance. If we keep making ourselves stronger and stronger and stronger down this line of progression, and we don't look at the freestyle handstand and making that strong, we'll get down the end here and we'll be strong enough to do a handstand push-up, but our freestyle handstand won't be strong enough. So then we'll have a delay. Then we'll have to go back and work on that freestyle handstand push-up. So we ideally want to do that at the same time, in parallel with doing the strength work. Okay, so now we can go next, eccentric, wall, deficit, handstand push-up. My spelling and my writing isn't the best. Okay, next we got eccentric wall deficit handstand push-up. Now this is, the further we go, the more it becomes a little bit gray in terms of what's harder, one thing to the next. The big thing is I just try and do with my clients is try and mix it up enough so they have some variety as they do it, to try and keep the body being shocked and try and find the client's gaps in their position, in their movement. A lot of the time, it's not the strength. The strength is pretty simple. Like I say, it's the underbalance, it's the freestand and handstand that they need to work on and make that super strong. So eccentric deficit handstand push-up, I can't really demo that here, but basically it's exactly the same as the one I just demoed up against the wall, the eccentric, but you have your hands on something and you finish in the shoulder stand position. Now the shoulder stand position is a prerequisite. So that's the bottom. So the prerequisite of the deficit prereq is a shoulder stand. But interestingly, the shoulder stand for most people is easier to hold than the bottom of the standard handstand push-up because there's just more space. And because you can take your head and shoulder forwards of the body, then it's easier to hold that position. The easiest way to do it is on the edge of a box or on P-bars or on the edge of a wall, and just get comfortable, ideally straight body, and being in that position. So see, that's the bottom of the eccentric handstand push-up. So I can't go any further. My arms have met my torso and I'm here. It's exactly the same thing. If you do a military press with a barbell, there's your start position. Can't come down any further, okay? So exactly the same for the eccentric deficit. We want to finish in that position. So if you don't have a shoulder stand, get a shoulder stand. So spend lots of time there, get really comfortable with it, play with different entries in and out. L-sit to shoulder stand, that sort of thing is really good. And things like L-sit to shoulder stand, movements like that, they would all be accessory work that we want to be working on. So there's other things that, again, run parallel with this that you could add in, but I wouldn't put it on the line of progression, but I would definitely add in as you do it. If not, the line of progression is going to get really complex. And that's what I mean about if you're a coach and you have a variety of different people with different strengths, different weaknesses, different flexibility, different body types, you're going to want to pull in all these different exercises to match the person. So knowing as many as possible is really useful. At the same time of doing this, or you could argue it's a slight progression, I would be doing partial range. So partial range, freestanding, handstand push-up. If you don't have freestanding handstand, then obviously you're working there at the same time and you can't work the partial range freestanding handstand push-up. You'll have to do it up against the wall so you can do the same drill. The idea is now you're working a bit of eccentric and concentric, but it's only a partial range because you can't do the full one yet. If you could do the full one, you'd already be at that end. Now the partial range is pretty simple. You basically start at the top, you go down a little bit and come back up again. Really, really good exercise for rebalancing as well. So I think there was a question on the comments asking why you should train handstand push-ups, even if your goal isn't handstand push-ups. So I recommend this a little bit of bent arm work. It doesn't have to be a full range handstand push-up, but I would definitely do the shoulder stand because it's so useful for other things. So make sure you can do a shoulder stand and then make sure you can do at least a small partial range if you've got a very strong freestanding handstand already. Just because in reality, your arms are going to bend a little bit. You can use like for bent arm presses, for just rebalancing the underbalance, bending the arms is really useful. So yoga block works really well because it's got different heights. Make a triangle. So the cool thing with this is we're making a triangle so we have a target. So I'm there. And now I'm going to come forwards with the shoulder and head, touch the floor, come back, open up to handstand again. And then you can just slowly decrease the height and go down and touch and come back up again. So that's a really good one. I think I should do that for today's Instagram video. Let's make a note of that. So partial range, Insta. Okay, guys, if you've got anyone who's on live, if you've got any questions, obviously stick them in. Ideally around handstand push-ups, but I can quickly cover anything else as well if you need to. Okay, so then we've got partial range, freestanding handstand, or it could be wall partial range. And then, so then we're just looking at decreasing the partial range as much as possible, getting closer and closer to the floor. And I'd also start to tie in other exercises, and doesn't mean I'll take away these. Basically, when we get up to the eccentric wall deficit handstand push-up and the partial range freestanding handstand push-up, and we can put, so we've got freestanding eccentric, freestanding deficit eccentric. So exactly the same as we was doing, but now freestanding. So we've got the down movement being looked after. So you're doing from the handstand all the way down, kissing the head to the floor, coming back down. That could be deficit if you've got enough strength to do that, or control to go all the way down. I don't think there's actually that much difference. If you can do a controlled freestanding eccentric and kiss the head to the floor, I reckon you can come down to a shoulder stand as long as you have a shoulder stand. So that one, and then I'd also be doing now things like crow to handstand. Now, a lot of people can do crow to handstand much earlier, around here somewhere, but the crow to handstand I'm talking about at this end is controlled. So let me show you what I mean by that. So a controlled crow to handstand, or frog to handstand, whatever you want to call it. You can use the partial range again. You can touch your forehead to something, but basically we want to be looking at going from this crow position here, and then pushing up to handstand. So see, there's no real momentum being used there. Obviously, in the earlier stages, or if you're not quite up to that moment, we could use a little bit of momentum to get you up. But ideally there, you would be doing it very strict, because we're getting to the pointy end of getting to the end of the handstand push-ups. So we've got that controlled crow to handstand. We've got freestanding eccentrics. So eccentric, freestanding, deficit to deficit. This isn't going to make any sense to anyone because it just looks like a jumble of words if you haven't followed along. So that's what I've done. I'm forcing you to watch the full bit video, you see. And then we're basically at the full handstand push-up. So once you get to this stage, you can do that with control. You can probably start to make attempts of doing the full range handstand push-up, and you might just need to play around with momentum. You could go headstand to handstand, which some people would argue is harder than a standard handstand push-up, just because it's like a dead start handstand push-up. Your forehead's on the floor. There's no weight in there. Let me show you that. That's the easiest way, demoing that. So you're in a headstand position. So you're already at that bottom position of the handstand push-up, and then you push from there to handstand. So for some of you, that is actually going to be harder. So you could argue we could put that in there somewhere. So headstand to handstand. Now, headstand to handstand, crow to handstand, that type of exercise, I would say that's accessory. So not something that I would program as a priority movement. The priority movements, so let's flag those now, because it seems to be like a big jumble of words on there at the moment. So we could go through with a red pen and go, okay, pike push-up, essential. Yeah. Eccentric deficit handstand push-up, essential. Partial range freestanding handstand push-up, essential. And I would probably go eccentric freestanding to a deficit, essential. So if you look at it that way, we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 exercises. A lot of people, I'll only use those 4, play with the others, add them in a little bit, but a lot of people will get their handstand push-up by that stepping stone. And then they'll get their full handstand push-up. Normally when people fly through something like that, we're also going to think about, okay, now we need to start to add in things like 90-degree handstand push-up, eccentrics. We need to be practicing bent arm planche positions. So we're getting ourselves ready to go to that 90-degree handstand push-up stage already. If someone needs all these other exercises as well, I won't be doing that as well. because that's just a little bit too much. And it also depends whether the person is training planche and front lever and muscle ups and one arm chins and everything as well. So it all gets very complicated then. So that's everything I wanted to go through in terms of the line of progression, to sort of tell you what goes through my head when I program for people. Like I say, if you are a coach or you coach people, I recommend that you do this across the board with all exercises. It's a really useful tool. And the way I think about things. So I write the movement down first, reverse engineer it, right back to the easiest variation, because look, we started with a normal push-up. And there's even some stuff there in that normal push-up that is useful for people working down this end as well in terms of keeping that body one segment. How do you unlock full legs movement with handstand, or you just gain it from doing it for a long time? Unlock full leg movement. Do you mean mobility? So like middle splits for like straddle, tuck, that type of thing? So more mobility type stuff? So just let us know on that what you mean by the unlock full legs movement. I'm assuming that's, yeah, just play it. Yeah, look, when I started, because I started later on with this stuff, so I was 37 when I started, struggled to touch my toes, couldn't even think about getting anywhere close to splits or anything like that. I've had to do lots of mobility work. So normally when I program for someone, if I'm programming handstands, I also program a warm-up or a flexibility routine that goes with it, because most people will need to unlock their hips in some way, their hamstrings, their quads, their hip flexors, just grabbing more space through the legs. So yes, I would normally add in some leg mobility stuff. And it's the cool thing with the leg mobility stuff, it's really good to do that in between your sets when you're resting, and then carries over to other things. But normally when people are working something like this, they also want to get like a pistol squat or, Van Damme splits or something. Yeah, Simonster is someone. So if you don't know who Simonster is, check out Simon's content on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. He makes things look so easy. If you think my handstand push-ups are good, his are on another level. And he's really good at making the body one piece. So you'll notice he'll stay like that because he's got full planche as well for time. He can then go down and his body just stays as one. So anything he does, the whole body moves together, and he doesn't have to put any energy into working out how to deal with the hips closing or the body rolling about all over the places. So yeah, he's a great example of someone who makes things look stupidly easy. He's a really nice guy as well. He's very humble and knowledgeable as well. Any other questions? I think I answered. I had some questions on the post that I put up a couple of weeks ago, but I tried to integrate all of those into these. What are the progressions for handstand push-ups? Should you train daily? I wouldn't do handstand push-ups daily. I'd do it like 3 or 4 times a week, especially if you're like up this end where we're doing more 5-rep stuff, where you're trying to break some muscle fibers down and get stronger with it as well. You obviously don't want to be doing the same strength movements on a daily basis. And hey, Richard as well from the UK. Whereabouts are you from the UK? So I'm originally from Norfolk, Kings Lynn and Norfolk. Is it enough to do handstand push-up negatives and then press up as hard as I can? No, I wouldn't do handstand push-up negatives only. I would definitely be working some concentric work and some partial range. So some push-up variations, some partial range, and then some concentrics on the wall as well. I don't even know if I put the concentrics on the wall. Yeah, somewhere in there I should have put wall concentrics. Wall concentrics. So the wall concentrics are pretty cool because you can walk up and down the wall as well, like walk your feet up and down as you do it. How to balance in a handstand push-up. So slow eccentrics are going to really help you with that. Let me show you a real slow eccentric handstand push-up. Just to show how much balance I have it. So this isn't to show off. I like showing off as well, but this isn't to show off. So I'm going to show how much balance I have through the range of motion. So if you have really good balance through the range of motion of a handstand push-up, you don't need to put energy into rebalancing as you do it. So a lot of people whose balance aren't that good, they have to decrease the amount of energy they use for the handstand push-up because they're rebalancing the whole time. So there's my straight position, and then I'm just going to take shoulders forwards, feet backwards, start to bend the elbows, So I'm not rebalancing because I'm sitting in the middle of that balance window because I've got so comfortable doing this, done it so many times, can come down, then kiss the floor, and then come back down. So eccentric freestanding handstand push-up as slow as possible. That's going to teach you that balance. And if you can't do that yet, then stick your toes on the wall and slide down the wall as you do it. Yeah, you mean you just need a, it's not so much of, I wouldn't say it's so much about the lower back. I'd say it's more making the body one piece. So a lot of people do dip through the low back. So that's like where you'll see them collapse. So where they'll arch, normally because the hips are trying to take over and the shoulders are forwards and then the body bananas. So mobility, like through the hips and through the back and thoracic is really important. Why is the coordination for handstand push-ups on bars so much harder? I can do 3 to 5 on the floor, but none on the P bars, same range of motion. So one of the things will be the external rotation that I showed earlier with the P bars, because most P bars are fixed. So they'll even pull you into a little bit of internal rotation. The distance apart won't be ideal for you. So with the P bars, and like if you go to the P bars in like a park, normally they're like this, they're like that. So they're out here somewhere and they're fixed and they're normally really fat as well. So that instantly that's not my sweet spot for my handstand push-up. So having ones that you can adjust. So I go to a bit of external rotation. So I turn them out slightly. That's where I would go if I'm going to try and get strong handstand push-ups, especially if I'm going to go really low with them. So create a bit more space, open the chest up, a bit of external rotation. Same as when I freestand, I do that with my hands. Makes it much easier. So that'll be one of the reasons. And then the other reason is most people are way more comfortable on the floor if they've done more reps on the floor. So it's just a practice thing where you will get some people that can only handstand push up on P bars because they never do it on the floor. So some of it is practice around there as well. Now, I think I've got a list of questions here from before, and I think I've covered all of them now. If you're watching this in the future, then just stick any questions down in the comments and I'll try and get back to them. Anyone else who's on live got any more questions? Because I've got to make this short and sweet today. I've got a workshop to organize for tonight. I want to learn pike press with straight legs to handstand, but I find my hamstrings are very tight and difficult to train. Yeah, so just you just got to smash your hamstrings basically. So if you want to have a pike press, you need a really good forward fold. So visiting it daily, do like Jefferson curl, forward fold type stuff. So this type of stuff. So every day doing things like that. And if you're super tight in the hamstrings, a single leg elevated is really good. So sticking your foot up on something like this, have the hips square, pull the hip backwards, try and keep the back flat, and then walk the hands forwards, hold that. You can grab the foot when you get flexible enough, pull the foot towards you, that type of thing. I always do those in any mobility program or class, either the forward fold or that single leg one. Normally single leg one more for beginners because you can really isolate and find out where you're tight. And that's just one of those things. I was the same. I could hardly touch my toes when I started. So I had to really smash my hamstrings. I was doing Jefferson curls just about on a daily basis. And it slowly got better, but it took lots of time. Okay, guys, if there's no other questions, I'm going to fly off. I'm going to do a much more detailed video on the handstand push-up and type all that up in a nice format and put it into some sort of little course or something on the handstand push-up. I'm going to do one for the press and the handstand push-up just because I think it's worthwhile. Some people want to get really nerdy about it, so doing like an hour, 2 hour like lecture type thing on my understanding of the handstand push-up and the press, I think will be really useful for people, especially if they're coaches, because there's a little bit involved when you've got different body types and stuff doing the same skills. Cool. Well, I'm going to sign off now. I'll give you 30 more seconds. Stick another question on there or I'll disappear. I'm just checking out how professional my whiteboard skills are. Why does my right leg bend in straddle pike press? It's only the right leg. How can I fix it? So I would. So when you assess, you want to assess your body. You want to have a look at head to toe, like left to right hand sides, and just look at the imbalances. So quad, hip flexor, hamstring are the main ones I would really work on and isolate left to right hand side. So you can do that single leg hamstring one on the box like I just showed. You can do quad and hip flexor stretches independently. I'd go up against the wall because it's quite measurable. So I can go really close to the wall now. I'm using the yoga block so it doesn't smash my knee on the concrete. But if I wind this right hip flexor up, this right quad there, I know the distance I am away from the wall, and then I can swap legs and do it on the other side. And I'm going to get an idea of the tightness between those two. I can do like a glute stretch, like a pigeon stretch on the left and the right hand side. So you're just basically looking for imbalances. If you look back on my old handstand videos, you'll see that my legs are bent and outside, like they're not apart. Oh, sorry, they're not together. Legs are apart. My right ankle turns over. Basically, my body was so tight through the thoracic, through the low back, through the hips. When I done a handstand, it like something went out of position. So it's probably a combination of all the things in the body, and that's just the body's out. So where it dumps the energy out, it has to bend a leg. Once the kids are back at school, I'm going to be live streaming. I normally live stream on Mondays and Fridays. At the moment, because the kids are on school holidays, it's a bit tricky to do the live streams, but I'm going to just try and mix it up in terms of the times at the moment. And then when I get a little bit more structured when the kids are back, I will be doing them like 2 or 3 times a week. I do reverse Nordic curls. Is that fine? Yeah, the trouble is with the reverse Nordics is you're doing both legs at the same time. I would isolate it. If you're seeing an imbalance, I would isolate it to a separate stretch per leg. So then you can feel what's going on both sides. Double leg is good, but because it saves time and you can smash it a bit harder, but you can't really tell the imbalances left to right so much. Most people will have an imbalance left to right though because they have a dominant leg, so don't overly stress about it unless there's pain. Got sternum inflammation from weighted dips the other day. It's been weeks and it still hurts. When you recommend staying away from dips? I'd obviously get checked out by someone who knows what they're talking about and they can assess you in person from like a physio or something. But in terms of things like dips, push-ups and stuff like that, you have to find your sweet spot for the movement. I've got like a dodgy left shoulder. That's why my one-arm handstand isn't great on my left and it's much better on my right. Because I sometimes get pain on the left-hand side from an old injury. But basically, it's like a squat. If I might find that when I squat with my legs like this, I can't, like it hurts. It gives me hip pain. If I go slightly wider and turn this right leg out a little bit, now it's much easier. So I've found the sweet spot for my leg position to make my hips happy. Exactly the same with dips. If you're using dip bars that are putting you in a bad position for your shoulders or not allowing you to use good technique, then just changing your setup. So get someone to look at your technique and look at your setup. So what's the dip bars like? Changing the variation might just help fix it. So that's what I normally do. And then obviously, if you still get pain, then go see someone who knows what they're talking about. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off, but keep the questions coming in the comments if you need to, or message me on one of the other ways of doing it on social media, or check out the website. So I do offer coaching and stuff. So if you haven't been to my website, which is www.paultwyman.com.au, I do Zoom sessions, and you can book them on the website itself. Video critiques, programming, that type of stuff. Can I do pancake for one leg? No, I wouldn't do pancake for one leg. I would do the stretches around the pancake. So like your glute stretch, your adductor, Cossack squats are really good because you can focus on each side. What's a good exercise for pelvic tilt? So you want to free up the pelvis for pelvic tilting. So you just basically want to make sure the hip flexors, quads, and hamstrings are happy, and there's enough range in there. So that's normally the issue with the pelvic tilting is you get stuck. So people have got, their hip flexors are way too turned on, so they get pulled into an anterior tilt. I know quite a bit about that because I've studied with Paul Check and done corrective exercise for a number of years before I'd done this style of training. So that's a real common one. So yeah, just basically freeing up above and below the pelvis on each side and making sure that the quad, hip flexors, hamstrings, quadratus lumborum, all the muscles surrounding the hip. And if you still struggle with it, go see someone who knows what they're talking about and can give you some feedback on that positioning. Okay, 40 minutes, guys. I'm going to have to disappear. The kids are going to start screaming. I will speak to you soon. Keep the questions coming in. I can't talk. I'll speak to you later.